Right. Welcome back to Morning Joe. It's the top of the hour. It's Thursday, January 11th. Katty Kay still with us, and joining the table, Speaker Emerita Democratic Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi of California. We have so much to discuss with you this morning, but just coming off of hearing Donald Trump last night in the Fox News town hall discussion, bragging about overturning Roe, or terminating Roe.
It again.
It's, I guess, something he's very proud of, but politically, will that help him?
Well, the elections have ramifications, as we know. First of all, lovely to be with you. Welcome to Washington. Yeah. Welcome back, Katty. One of the things that he has said, I didn't see last night, as you can just well imagine, but he has said is that Obamacare sucks. And this is in keeping with his attitude toward the health and well-being of the American people. And a woman's right to choose is a very important part of that, when, if, and how to proceed to have a family. So as we go forward in this campaign, what we're doing is making sure people are aware of that. As you may recall, in 2018, when we won, people said, oh, weren't you lucky that health care emerged as such an important issue in the campaign? I said, no, we weren't lucky. We made our own luck.
Right.
We had 10,000 events around the country where people told their stories. It wasn't about provisions. It was about personal experience.
Is Joe Biden making his own luck? Is Joe Biden making his own luck right now?
Well, we have to help him do that because, again, campaigns are about mobilization outside. And he is our centerpiece. But as we did then, we'll have thousands of events around the country with our veterans and their health care with the PACT Act under Joe Biden. This is remarkable with the woman's right to choose and what that means with the people with disabilities, what it means in the Affordable Care Act. And these are all economic issues, too, for families. Their health and well-being, first and foremost, but their financial health as well, because this is a big issue for them. The cost of prescription drugs. They want to reverse what we did in the Inflation Reduction Act to reduce the cost, negotiate for reducing the cost of prescription drugs. I'm going to take that to court. We reduced the cost of insulin from $600 a month for seniors on Medicare to $35 a month. They want to reverse that. So, again, health is a central issue for us. A woman's right to choose is essential to that.
And building on the work you've done, I know that was one of your, I think, most incredible achievements, and you told me that in our ACA. And I think as of yesterday that we had the HHS secretary on talking about record enrollment, 20 million people.
Yes.
Are they all Democrats? No Republicans like it? I don't think so.
No.
I think people like their health care.
Yeah, I'm curious. We go down the issues, and if you're talking about health care, Americans like the Affordable Care Act. Donald Trump says it sucks. He wants to destroy it. Americans like women making decisions about their health care. If a 10-year-old girl is raped in Ohio, they don't want politicians telling that 10-year-old girl what to do. They want the parents and the priests, the pastors, healthcare people to help them out. I mean, you look at schools. Parents are afraid to send their kids to school because of guns. Donald Trump wants more guns on the street of America. You keep going down it. He's talking about executing generals. He's talking about it wanting the economy to be destroyed this year, wrecking seniors' retirement. How is this race even close?
You wonder how people could even... He describes himself practically as a messiah, wants to wreck the... Obamacare sucks, wants to be a dictator for at least a day. But anyway, not to talk so much about him. He's what he is, but to talk about what it means in people's lives when he talks about bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade. And this is something young people care about. Now, in this, I talked about the election before. The election, I'm talking politics now because yesterday the Republicans couldn't pass a rule on the floor, so they dismissed us all for the day, so I had a chance to do politics.
Have you ever seen any Congress run as badly as this Republican House over the past year and a half?
No, I haven't. No, in the 35 years I have been there.
Yeah.
It's pretty terrible. But in any event, again, we have to win. Just win, baby, as I say. So in the last election, all the pundits said we're going to leave 30, 40 seats. Right. And I knew that was wrong. I thought we could hold the House, as a matter of fact, because of what you just named, Joe. That list: guns, climate, women's right to choose, democracy. Democracy. People said, oh, democracy doesn't matter. Roe v. Wade's in the rearview mirror. No, it wasn't. But we could see that in each individual race. And we end up losing 5 in New York, which we will win back, and we'll win the House. But but people understand freedom. We talk about democracy, and that's an important value. It's everything. But it's personal, too. It's personal about your personal freedom, about having a family, of who you are, LGBTQ. It's about having the freedom to engage in business. That the previous segment is ridiculous.
It's unbelievable.
That is so ridiculous that they wouldn't want the best in our country. And the best means to have the beautiful diversity of America working in our private sector.
I always say that President Obama owes you flowers for the rest of your life. The Affordable Care Act, because you did such a heroic job for him. I mean, we're talking about it being close in terms of the presidential election, but it's also close in terms of House districts. You know this when you go around the country. How do you account for that when you look at this particular Congress, which has spectacularly failed to achieve really any legislation of importance for American people? What do you hear from people when you go around the country about why it's so close?
Well, again, we are now in election season. We weren't before. And now it's time for us to make the case, and for them, people will pay more attention now. They haven't been paying attention last year. But they have to know. You've heard me say a million times, Lincoln said public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. But for sentiment to prevail, people have to know.
Right.
So now we have to have their attention. Young people who are ambivalent about what comes next have to know what it means in terms of women's right to choose, LGBTQ, what it means about the planet, what it means about guns. These are issues that they care about, and they have to know the difference between Democrats and Republicans.
Get their news in the right place. Speaker Pelosi, you've written a new piece for The Atlantic, and it's entitled What January 6th Made Clear to Me. And you write in part, quote, January 6th was another perilous moment for our democracy. It was an attack not just on our Capitol, but on our Constitution. And some who carried out the assault under Lincoln's dome were carrying the Confederate flag. And on that dark night, Congress again projected America's strength and resolve. Now, 3 years later, we are called on to do the same. The threat to our democracy is real, present, and urgent. The parable of January 6th reminds us that our precious democratic institutions are only as strong as the courage and commitment of those entrusted with their care. We all share a responsibility to preserve American democracy, which Lincoln called the last best hope of Earth. And I guess I appreciate those words. They're inspirational, and I want to know how you forge ahead and stay positive, because this has become incredibly personal, especially with your husband being brutally attacked. We're seeing what happened with Hunter Biden on the floor of the House and in the Oversight Committee yesterday, just the cruelty of it, the danger of it. It's a different game now.
It is different, and I think that we have to win this election to leapfrog over this. This cannot be the path that we are on for our country. We want to attract young people to be involved in politics, more women to be involved in the rest. And but they tell me sometimes is I cannot risk my family in that regard, especially with small children. But it is. It's an opportunity. Thomas Paine said the times have found us at that time. We think the times have found us to counter what's his name who used to be in the White House and the things that he's saying, the Messiah, I don't even have to go into it. Yeah. Let's be in a positive place. We have been blessed with a great president. Joe Biden is a great president. What he did in the first 2 years working together, the House and Senate Democrats take some credit for it, because so many of the things we did were without one Republican vote. Sometimes we got a few, 13 for infrastructure, some for chips and that. But in all that we did for climate, all we did to lower the cost of prescription drugs, not one Republican vote. But he has been great, and he has a vision for our country that is consistent with what our founders had as a vision. He has knowledge, and again, it honors that vision. It honors the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform, and it again respects the aspirations of our children to go forward. So he has a vision. He has knowledge of the issues. He has strategic thinking about legislating, all in the head.
Right.
In the heart, he is the most empathetic. God, he's the most empathetic person in the, I mean, he just really identifies with working families. So it all comes down to the kitchen table. These are kitchen table issues: the health, the education, the well-being of the American people, what the economy means to them. When what his name says, he wants the economy to crash. Does he care what that means to jobs? Now look at Joe Biden. 14 million, more than 14 million jobs created, much of it in the private sector, but under his leadership. What he has done, unemployment going down, inflation on a lower path. We have to bring down the cost of living, and that has an impact on people's lives. But what we're finding out, because Caddy asked, finding out is people are appreciating some of this, but they're not sure where it came from.
Right.
And so how does that message, how do we connect that? Because even conservatives, even a conservative like Gerard Baker, who is the editor emeritus for the Wall Street Journal, talked about winners and losers. Winner of the year, America's economy. And he said, sorry, I know I'm going to upset a lot of people, but as Caddy says all the time, America's economy, Joe Biden's work and America's economy is the envy of the world. How do we get that message out to voters?
Well, again, I used to say when I was Speaker, I can bake the pie or I can sell the pie. It's hard to bake and sell at the same time. He's been working very hard, and now he has to sell it.
Right.
He has to sell it. And again, this is a very responsible, knowledgeable, values-based person who takes his responsibility seriously. Now it's time to make the public aware of it, and that's
almost ready.
The pie is ready. No, I hear they're coming out of the gate. I think they're going to start really pushing hard.
And the members are just all revved. When you acknowledge the Affordable Care Act, it was the courage of my members, our members, to take the vote under the ridiculous claims that were being made, John Lewis being spat at, all horrible. But it was also the outside mobilization, all the people who understood why it was important. Thank God for the nuns. They helped us there with some in their own, shall we say, which I share, their own faith. But it is about the outside mobilization, and that's what we will engage in, to have people tell us in their own words what that means to them, and that resonates with other people in their own terms.
Are there Republicans in the House who you still feel you have good relationships with?
Yeah, there are some, a few. We are working in a good way with the Mike McCall in terms of the Ukraine and the rest. We're anticipating that will happen. It has to. It's some of the issues, Joe, that you know we worked in a bipartisan way, always about human rights, freedom of religion and the rest. We've always had common ground with some of our Republican members, but and I anticipate that we will pass something on Ukraine. We have to. That is democracy at stake.
You mentioned what we used to work on, China every year.
Yeah.
MFN. What do you make human rights, intellectual property, et cetera, et cetera? What do you make of the guy, what's his name, as you say, constantly praising President Xi, speaking admiringly of President Xi? Of course, the reports that President Xi told him about the concentration camps for the Uyghurs, and he was like, oh, okay. Because as people inside his administration said, he was so obsessed with getting an economic deal with China that concentration camps for 2 million Uyghurs and everything else just didn't matter. And he's still praising China's communist leader.
Well, it's in keeping with his praise of Putin and Kim Jong-un in North Korea and others. He models himself after that total control and the rest. But it was funny about it because he praises Xi, and yet he uses China as a cudgel. And I take second place to no one in Congress in my criticism of their proliferation of technologies for weapons of mass destruction, for their barriers to our products coming into their country, their violation of our intellectual property, the danger they pose in AI and the rest, as well as the human rights issue, a genocide with the Uyghurs, the destruction of democracy in Hong Kong, destroying the culture of Tibet, and just basically opposing freedom of speech in their country, in addition to their threat to Taiwan and their dangerous aggression in the South China Sea. On the other hand, we have to work with China on climate, the climate issue and the rest. And I tried to say to him, let us team up with the EU. We would be the biggest market anybody could ever imagine, of the United States and EU, and say to China, we want better trade policy. Instead, he put tariffs on the EU. But he used China in the campaign. He used it in the campaign, and then yet he praises. And she is worse. I mean, a stiff competition, mind you, but nonetheless worse in a series of leaders.
You're so right, and I'm so glad you brought it up, because it's something that I would guess 99% of Americans don't understand, and I think a lot of people on the Hill don't understand, and Donald Trump doesn't understand. You take America's economy, about $25 trillion. You take the EU's economy, $20 to $25 trillion. You add them up, that's a $50 trillion economy. $50 trillion together against China's $18 trillion. We would completely overshadow China. And yet Donald Trump always attacks democracies in Europe. He doesn't see the power of that alliance.
Well, let's just win this election and not worry about what he thinks, because, again, he's a danger to democracy in our country and in other places as well. And let's focus on what Joe Biden brings to the table. I think it's going to be an interesting year. We have a responsibility to communicate with the American people, to listen to them, to respect some of the concerns that people have. Some people who vote for him are concerned about innovation, where do they fit in, globalization, how does it affect them, immigration, even though they shouldn't be afraid of it, nonetheless, and just women, minorities, LGBTQ taking leading roles. It's frightening to them. So we have to address
you talked about education. You even have Democratic mayors, Democratic senators, Democratic governors saying we've got to have order at the border. We have to have a sane process at the border. That seems to be a viewpoint now accepted by most Democrats. And we now have this very bizarre scene of Democrats pushing for border security and Republicans pushing back. Do you think they're going to take the deal they've claimed they've always wanted, or are they going to reject it so they continue to demagogue the issue?
Well, immigration is a red meat issue for them. It was for years. It has been, and certainly under authorship. But the president has put forth over $10 billion to assist at the border. We've always been for controlling our border, for securing the border. There's never been a question about that. But how it is done, how we honor our values in terms of asylum seekers and the rest, but also how we have order there. When the speaker made his first speech, when he was elected, I went to congratulate him, and I said, I see that you quoted Ronald Reagan, and I want you to be aware of Ronald Reagan's last speech as President of the United States. It's so beautiful.
It is.
And he said, this is the last speech I'll make as President. Imagine, the great communicator. This is the last speech I will make as President of the United States. He talked about the Statue of Liberty, about America being a country that is constantly invigorated, therefore always young, always vital and preeminent in the world, because our door was always open. And if we ever close the door, our preeminence would be diminished in the world. It's better than that. Google it.
Oh, it's incredible. It's incredible speech.
But he said, no, he was not familiar with it, but I referred him to that. And when I speak about Ronald Reagan on the floor in that regard, because he did great things on immigration, and even more than when Congress passed the immigration bill in '86. I wasn't here at that time, neither were you. But he said we have to do more.
Right.
So understanding we're a nation of immigrants. On the other hand, we have to have order in all of it, and they are rejecting what the president is proposing, over $10 billion to that effect.
Of course.
Wow.
Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, always good to see you, and thank you so much for coming into the studio today.
My pleasure.
Great
I'm so happy to see you in D.C.
So here's the message. The pie has been made.
It's ready.
It's baked. Go sell the damn pie.
It's delicious.
Just sell it. Stop whining and sell the pie, right?
Just win, baby.
Just win, baby.